I have an Excel file here with various bills and their due dates that I need to be paying, and I want to create a function on Power Automate that looks through this Excel file every day, and whichever bills are overdue, it gives me a notification at a certain time every day that those bills need to be paid and are overdue. So I'm going to use Power Automate to set up a flow, and then I'm going to use Task Scheduler on my PC here to schedule that flow to occur every day or whenever I want it to. The method you're going to use will vary depending on whether you're doing it for your personal account or for your work or school account, and I'll walk you through the steps for both so you have an idea on how to establish this flow. So the first thing I'll do is I have opened up Power Automate here, and I want to set up a new flow. So I'm just going to go into new flow, and I'll just call it overdue bill, and I'll create that. And now what I want the flow to do is to open this Excel file to look through, and whichever bills are overdue, I want to return a notification. So I'm going to go ahead, and the first action will be to launch Excel. So the command is launch Excel, and I want to launch a specific Excel file. So the document, the Excel file, I can just find its path. So I know it's in my documents and it's right over here. So I can open that, and the file is currently open. So I'm just going to close it for now, and then I'll open it over here. So this is the file that we want to open. Now, make instance visible means that every time this is happening, the Excel file will actually open on your PC or your laptop as well. I don't want the Excel file to open in front of my eyes. I want to keep it all behind the scenes. So I'm going to close this, and we're going to skip this part. Variables produced is just the name of the result of this flow. So for me, I'm just going to call it Excel file. This is all just naming conventions to help you remember whatever flows you've set up. So I'm going to call it Excel file, and what this action does is it opens our Excel file that I just showed earlier. Now the next step will be to read the Excel table from the Excel file. So I'm going to type read from Excel worksheet, and now this is my Excel file, the Excel instance that we created. Remember, we named it Excel file, and I want to retrieve all available values from the worksheet. There's only one table within the Excel file anyway, so it's kept pretty clean. I'm going to select first line of range contains column names, because my Excel table, the first row is the column names, right? So I want Power Automate to be aware of that. And then variables produced, Excel data. So this is the instance name, and I'm happy with this. So I'm going to keep this name, and I'll press save. And now, just to save my system resources, I want to close the Excel file as well in the background. So I'm going to close Excel, and I'm going to drag that command into here as well. And then I don't need to save the Excel file because I'm not making any changes to it. I'm simply, this flow is simply just reading from the Excel file. So I'm just going to save this as is. And now what I want to do is I want to be looking at the date and time over here and seeing if anything is overdue. So in order for me to do that, I need to know the current date and time. So I'm going to use the function get current date and time. And in my Excel file, I only have the date. I don't have the exact time that I'm looking for. So in this over here, I only need the date, not the time. And the variables produced, I'll just call it current date, and I'll save that. And so as you can see, we have a function called current date, which is today's date. And then after that, the next thing is for us to actually go through each and every row. Remember, the first row is just headers, but after that, go through each and every row and look at the due date, which is column B, called due date, and compare it against our current date. So in order to do that, I need to know the syntax of this. So this column is called due date with capitals and no spaces. So I'm going to go into here, and I'm going to introduce a for each loop that will start up. The value to iterate will be the Excel table. So in my formulas here, the Excel file, or the Excel table rather, is called Excel data. So I'm just gonna select that and double click that. So there we go, that's all. And then I'm gonna store it into the instance called current row. That's what I want it to be called. It doesn't really matter what you name, as long as the name has some meaning to it, it's meaningful, and you can go back to it if you need to and remember what it signifies. So for each current row in Excel data essentially means that I'm going through each row within my table, okay? And now what I want to do is, as I'm going through each row within that table, I want to look for the due date. And if the due date is less than or equal to today's current date, then I want to execute my action, right? Which will be the message that will come up. So in order for us to do that, I'm going to introduce an if function. And this if function, the conditional if, will actually go inside the for each loop. And the condition will be that the current due date. So for us, we named our current row as the current rows in the Excel file. So what we'll do over here is we'll call this current row. And now within the current row, we're looking for a specific column, and the column is the due date. So it's called due date. So over here, right before the percentage sign, I'm going to add square brackets and single quotes. And then within that, I'm going to write due date, which is my column header name. Now, essentially what that's doing is that's going through each and every row. And for each row, it's going to look at this due date column. And I want to match that as less than or equal to the current due date, right? The current date rather, which we did in our previous step. So current date. So essentially, if the current row due date, which is each and every date like this, if it's less than or equal to the current date, which is today's date, then that means that bill is overdue and we want to execute a certain function. Now, what function do we want to execute? So let's say a bill is overdue. I simply want a display message to come on my laptop that says that XYZ bill is overdue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a display message, a simple display message, and I'm going to put it inside my if conditional. And then that display message should say bill overdue. And the message to display should be customized. So it should be what amount is due and which bill is due. So I'm going to get my current row, which is the each and every row, right, that it's looping down through. And then within that row, I want to see the amount first. So here's my syntax. I'm going to say, for example, let's do office rent, $2,000. So let's say office rent, the bill is due. So I want something like this, $2,000 of office rent is due. And I'll add an exclamation mark as well. So this is the syntax I'm using. So I know the 2,000 and the office rent, these two things are coming from my Excel file, right? They're dependent on which row it's at. So the current row, I know that 2,000, which is the amount, is called amount due. So I'm going to come into here and add square brackets, single quotes, and within that I'm going to write amount due in the exact format it's written in my Excel file. And then I'm going to say of, because there's an of right over here. And then office rent is also dependent upon the row. So I'm going to find the current row once again, add square brackets and add single quotes. And then within those single quotes, I'll find the expense. So in my case, the office rent is under the bill name column. So in here, I'm going to write down bill name in the exact format. And then at the end, it says is due exclamation mark. So is due exclamation mark. And then the first part, amount due, is 2,000. So it's not going to return to me in the same format. It's just going to say 2,000, not with the dollar sign. So I'm going to add a $sign right over here as well. And then I'll get rid of this example that I had over here, and then I'll go through this. Everything here looks good. The variable produced, button pressed. I'm happy with that name, so I'm going to press save. So essentially, now what this is going to do is this is going to look through each and every row. It's going to first of all open the Excel file. It's going to read the Excel file, then it's going to close it. And then based on what it's read, it's going to go through each and every row and look through and compare the due date with the current date. And then if the due date is less than or equal to the current date, it's going to give an error and give that message that the bill is overdue. So before I schedule this task, I want to see if it works. And I know that my cleaning services bill is overdue because it was due on July 13th and today's the 19th. So it's 6 days overdue and it's $150. So I'm going to close my Excel file and I'm going to run Power Automate, this flow that we've created. And I'm going to see if it can pick up on that and give me that error message. If everything works properly, I'm expecting an error message to come up on my laptop saying that $150 worth of cleaning services is overdue. So I'm going to go ahead and play and let's see what happens. So as you can see, we get a time over here as well in the bottom left. And let's see if this works. So as you can see, we did get an error message. It says $150 of cleaning services is overdue. There just should be a space between of and cleaning. So we can go ahead and add that space into our display message. So I'll simply click on my display message and over here, I'm going to add that space and I'm going to save. So now what I want to do is I want to actually schedule this so that I'm not having to manually go to Power Automate and run the code. What I'll do is first of all, I'll just go ahead and make sure this is saved. And the name of it is overdue bill. That's the name of the flow. Now, if you're doing this for your work or school Office 365 account, you can simply go into your Power Automate online and you can go into more down here, machines, and you can make sure that your laptop is a desktop flow that is running over here. So your laptop is connected over here. As you can see, for me, I'm only signed in with a personal account, so I can't schedule the task over here. So in order for me to schedule the task, I'll need to be using Task Scheduler, which I'll be showing in a moment. It's a built-in app that we'll be using. But before I show that, it's important to note that I'm using Power Automate desktop version, and I installed it using the MSI installer. So I didn't install it through the Microsoft Store. It was through MSI installer. That's something important to note if you're doing this for your personal account and you want to schedule this flow. So now let me actually show you how I will schedule this to occur at 8 a.m. every day. What I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and open up NotePad and I'm going to paste the following line into NotePad. And over here, this location is simply the location of Power Automate desktop in my documents. So if I go to my C drive into program files, and then if I go to Power Automate desktop, I can scroll down and I can see that there is PAD.Console.Host extension. So this is the location of it, and this location is simply right over here. And then over here, I'm going to change this to my flow name. So my flow is called overdue bill. So exact way it's spelled in Power Automate, I'm going to spell it over here as well. Overdue space bill. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this as a all files, and then I can name it. So I'm going to call it running flow, and I'm going to save it as a .batch file, .bat file. Now this can be as UTF-8 or as ANSI, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. And once it's saved, one way to check if it's working is to actually go into my place where I've saved it. So I've saved it in my desktop, and then over here I can go ahead and double click and see if it's working. Now what this should do, when I double click this, what it should do is it should run that Power Automate flow, and it should give me that error message that it gave to me, just like when I was running the flow through Power Automate here. So let's say it's not working. What I can do is I can rename it to a text file. Then I can open it back up, and I can get rid of one of these dashes, just one, just so that we have one dash instead of two. And I can go ahead and save it back, and then I can go ahead and convert it back to a batch file, so .bat. And once that's done, essentially now when I click this should run the Power Automate flow, and it should give me the error message. Now I want to make sure that this flow is happening at 8 a.m. every single day. So in order to automate that, because I'm using the personal account, I can't do it through Power Automate web version. I'm going to have to use Task Scheduler to schedule this. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Task Scheduler. This, by the way, you don't need to install. You should already have it on your PC. And I'm just going to go into Create Basic Task. And then I'm going to name it Overdue Bills. And then I want it to occur daily. And I want it to occur at 8 a.m. daily. So I'm going to simply go ahead and change the timings over here and recur every 1 day because I want it to happen daily. And next, now what I want this to do is to start a program, and we're going to be feeding our batch file, the notepad file that we created, into here. So I'm going to go ahead and browse that file, which was called running flow, which we named as, and I'm going to open that, and I'm going to select next, and I'll finish this from here. Now I'm going to find the task right over here. Overdue bills is what it's called. And I'm going to go into properties. And the only thing I'm going to change here is the configuration. I'm using Windows 10, so I'm just going to change that and press OK. Over here, I can try running it once again to make sure it's working properly. And now everything is set up. So at 8 a.m. every morning, this Power Automate flow will go through, and I'll get an error message if I have any bills overdue. So that's how you can use Power Automate to schedule tasks from an Excel file, and then based on your Office 365 account, whether it's work and school or personal, how you can actually schedule that task so that you're not having to run that flow manually. I hope you found the video helpful. If you do have any questions, please do drop them down in the comments below and I'll go through them. And thank you so much for watching.